because it is going to be effective from 1st June 2016. So perhaps if it's a big contract, like Idea wants to buy 4G spectrum, so perhaps they are thinking online that they would be buying much prior to the period of 1st June 2016. Irrespective of the fact, it is still sandwettable.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Let's look at the changes under the negative list now. There are certain proposed changes in the negative list. Now this is going to be effective after the finance bill is enacted. Now negative list entry under the 66D covering education service, which is proposed to be omitted and inserted in the mega exemption notification. What they've done is basically there are few exemptions few entries in the negative list which have been removed now and put in mega exemption notification. I think the intention behind that is probably coming towards GST. Slowly they want to phase out these exemptions. So maybe that is the reason why they have done this kind of a thing.
Agree.
Yeah.
Because even though no roadmap has been laid down for GST, as we all know, because of political reasons. But having said that, moving out and taking out those exemptions, the intent of the government is to go towards GST itself.
Correct. So now what they've done is in this from negative list they've removed this specified education service and which had these entries of preschool education, higher education, secondary education or equivalent education as a part of curriculum for obtaining qualification recognized by any law, and education as a part of an approved vocational course. Now that's what they have got it in general exemption.
Right. So the underlying impact is the intent is that only of the government to bring in line with GST, because they want to do away with all the exemptions.
Again, this is stage carriage. Now earlier stage carriage was exempted and contract carriage was only taxable with 60% of abatement. Now that distinction they have removed and they have got stage carriage also in this, and with an abatement of 60% available without credit. Obviously that was also without credit, this is also without credit.
But just to bring it on the same parameter, that stage carriage and contract carriages are on the same footing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Transportation of goods by an aircraft or vessel. Now this is again I think a boost to the domestic shipping, because they will be able to come into the credit chain by doing this. So what it basically says is transportation of goods by an aircraft or a vessel from place of outside India up to the custom station of clearance is removed from the negative list and gotten over here. But in case of I think in case of aircraft, what they have done is up to the exemption is still available for aircraft, but in case of vessel that is chargeable.
Right.
So there is again a disparity between aircraft and vessel in this particular case. But in case of this foreign companies, now what they'll have to do is they'll have to still pay service tax on reverse charge.
Yes, right.
You have anything to say on this?
I think the intent of to tax these under the service taxes also has an implication under the Customs Act, where on account of the assessable value, when the assessable value was being undermined, then even the freight paid in respect of the ocean freight, as we say, paid was also taken as part and parcel of the as assessable value for calculation of the customs duty. Now what they have tried to do, they have tried to de-link ocean freight, and on the other hand they have tried to take it under the service tax net, so that it is avoiding double taxation.
Correct.
Yeah. The whole intent is just to split them and also allow credit on reverse charge. They have to pay on reverse charge and then avail credit.
But this is again in the TRU letter. They have still to come out with a notification. So right now we really cannot say whether that has to be included in the assessable value or not. I think we leave it up.
I think the intent is that to de-link ocean freight from assessable value while calculating another Indian custom.
Correct. There are certain legislative changes also. Explanation under definition of service is amended. Explanation is inserted to include activity carried out by lottery distributor or selling agents of state government under Lotteries Act is liable to service tax. So basically, any kind of an agent now will be, it's a deemed agency kind of a relationship now, and service tax will be applicable, which was not there earlier, and there were a lot of issues on that. You can probably
I think this change which has been brought about in the Finance Act is to overdo or overcome the judgment of Sikkim High Court in the case of future gaming, in which the High Court of Sikkim had held that the relationship between the stockist when he buys tickets from the state government and thereafter having a markup on the said transaction, selling those tickets is on P2P basis. So this transaction and bringing about under the service tax net and treating it as an like a agency principal agency relationship is just to overcome that judgment of Sikkim High Court, and that's all. It's nothing. It's just they wanted to reverse that judgment of Sikkim High Court.
Declared list of services amended. Right to use radio frequency spectrum and subsequent transfer. Now this is arising out of this Antrix
Corporation, which is Bangalore High Court. In 2010, the issue had arisen that on leased transponders, VAT is applicable. And the matter had travelled to Supreme Court and then remanded back to High Court. And High Court again had held that this is falling under the category of a deemed sale under Article 366(29)(a) and therefore amenable to tax in the contracting state, that is Karnataka. The whole intent to bring about as right to use on spectrum services under the declared services, I think is going to open a Pandora box again, and there is going to be a lot of litigation within the state and center on this aspect. Of course, they have clarified under the declared services as a declared services, but it is bound to have it is bound to have repercussion, and the state would want to tax it as a state levy.
Correct. Senate credit is allowed in relation to this service tax paid on upfront charges for assignment of spectrum. So what it basically means is if it is for a period of 20 years, then it has to be divided, the credit has to be divided for those 20 years. Right. And in case it goes to another agency, then the whole credit has to go at one go.
So can you just put more light into this, by giving an example that how it would work?
So if there is a term of a contract for say 20 years, then suppose it's say 20 lakhs. Then 1 lakh per month is what credit will be per year is the credit that you can take.
Right.
Out of that, suppose 10 lakhs you have already availed, and the rest 10 lakhs you've given it to some other agency or somebody else to. Then that entire 10 lakhs will is something which will go to him.
Right.
That is what they mean.
But I think they might have some issues in relation to direct taxes, whether it is going to be a capital expenditure or a revenue expenditure. So that needs to be seen.
In fact, I think in today's this newspaper, Economic Times, they are talking about this idea and all buying perspective.
Yeah, that's what I
which you said initially. So they'll all have to plan it before the legislative changes take place, because otherwise the service tax will be a huge.
Right.
Limitation period to issue show cause notice. The show cause notice issued for cases not involving fraud, collusion, suppression, etc. is proposed to be enhanced from 18 months to 30 months. So earlier it was 12 months, then they made it 18, now they made it 30. Probably the intent is, they have a more time to issue show cause notice. Of course, there is a limitation period for fraud and all for 5 years.
Right.
But this is, other than fraud and all, they have got 30 months.
Yeah.
There are certain interest provisions also which they have amended, and I think this is a good change, because the earlier the interest charged earlier up to 31st March 2011 was 13%.
Right.
Thereafter, from 31st March up to 30th of September, it became 18%. After that, the next 6 months used to be 18%. And from 6 months to 1 year thereafter was 24%, and beyond 1 year was 30%, which was really a huge rate of interest. And there were a lot of representations given by a lot of people. Probably they have considered that, or again it's a good thing. So now the new provisions of interest say that collection of amount and failing to pay service tax, in case you have collected the amount but have not paid service tax to the department, then you have the rate of interest will be 24%. In normal circumstances, where suppose returns are late or invoice is not raised in time, then it will be 15%. And assessees whose taxable value which is less than 60 lakhs, they will be the interest rate will be 12%.
Right. So this is quite a welcome change with respect to levy of interest.
Absolutely.
Irrespective that there is a late payment, but what is required to be seen whether suppose I take an example that the transaction is cum tax, right? But I have paid only some amount of the tax. So whether it will tantamount to short payment of tax, or will it tantamount to will I fall under the 15% category, or will I fall under the 24% category?
Yeah, that is an ambiguity actually, because the thing is, if you have collected less tax and not paid that less tax, then they are not clarified whether it will fall in 24% or 15%.
Right.
They
so they might come out with some clarification on this issue.
Yes. Penalty provisions, there is a proposal that penalty proceedings shall be deemed to be closed in cases where main demand and penalty proceedings have been closed.
Right.
This means that there are certain personal liabilities, sometimes certain personal show cause notices which are issued on the directors and all, where they have also been issued a show cause notice. So in case the main proceedings are closed, then automatically the directors and all, even their proceedings are closed. That is what it means.
Okay.
Now this will obviously reduce litigation, so this I think is again a step towards GST probably.
Right. No, even reducing litigation.
Correct. Now the power of arrest is proposed to be restricted only to situations where taxpayer has collected tax but not deposited. And the monetary limit, even the earlier and the later, the bullet points is the same. It basically says now the earlier threshold limit was 50 lakhs.
Right.
Now it is 2 crores. So only if it is more than 2 crores, then in that case, they can file a complaint and propose arrest. So this is again a very welcome kind of.
It's a welcome step undoubtedly, but because there were a lot of representations received from various industry at large, because of a lot of harassment, these inspectors and the commissioners were coming to the doorstep and threatening all these CEOs and CFOs, and therefore increasing the limit from 50 lakh to 2 crore is definitely a welcome step in line with the government. The intent of the government is to give more space, and try to not harass people at large.
I think the slide is gone. 1 second.
This is what you can see.
Should we go on with the slides?
No, it will not be seen.
This is a benefit to the exporters. Now refund of service tax on services used beyond the factory or any other place of premises of production or manufacture of goods of the said goods for export of the said goods are allowed. That means now service tax can be refunded even for services that are used beyond the factory up to the port. Earlier refund was available only up to the factory gate. So now in any kind of services up to the port that you have availed, maybe your transportation or whatever, that also can be claimed as a refund, which is again a very good kind of a amendment.
And this is also the fallout of that judgment from Punjab and Haryana High Court in the case of Ambika overseas, where it was held by the Punjab and Haryana High Court that sales promotion affected even carried out even after place of removal the credit should be allowable to that. And this is a welcome step, and many companies will benefit out of this move.
And the best part is that this amendment is given a retrospective effect.
Yes, right.
Right from 1/7/2012.
Right.
So the time period is 1 month to be allowed for the exporters whose refund claims were earlier rejected. So
Correct.
even they can apply for that.
But you need to see the, there will be certain clarifications which will
probably,
come out.
Yeah. No, but at least over here it's looking like a...
No, definitely it's a welcome step by the finance minister.
Yes. Restoration of exemptions. There are certain exemptions which have been restored.
Yeah.
Exemption from service tax on services by way of construction, erection, etc. of general original works pertaining to an airport port was withdrawn from effect of 1/4/2015.
Yeah.
That exemption was restored for contracts prior to 1/3/2015.
Right.
And exemption again been restored from 1/3/2000. It is being restored till 31/3/2000. Again, there is a clarification which for refund that we are awaiting. Now we can file the refund for this period where the taxable. It was taxable basically these things from 2015 to 16.
Yeah.
Then now again exempted. Now hence refund for that particular period. How it can be claimed is something which needs to be seen. Exemption in respect of following services are withdrawn. This is services provided by senior advocate to an advocate or partnership firm of advocates,
Right.
and a person represented on arbitral tribunal to an arbitral tribunal. Now these people, they will have to pay on forward charges, service tax. So and as far as the other firm of advocates and all, reverse charge is still applicable. Do you want to say anything on this? Because
I think the idea to bring about taxing senior advocates on a forward charge is, I suppose there was some surveys which were conducted, and it was found that even on reverse charge, payment was not being made by the clients, and therefore to cut that, curb those loophole, it has been suggested by the finance minister that the service tax is paid by the senior advocates on a forward charge. So they will have to discharge their liability, get themselves registered, and
correct.
Yeah.
We've been getting calls from most of the law firms, and
most of them.
everybody is asking about this since yesterday.
Otherwise, it is a revenue neutral actually, because the impact is that even if I am a briefing counsel, and when my bill goes from the firm to the company, then
Correct.
company has to pay on the reverse charge. Otherwise, it has no impact. It's neutral.
Then now there are certain abatements which have been given. In case of this tour operator, it is effective from 1/4/2016, where a tour operator is providing services solely for arranging booking accommodation, then they are getting 90% of abatement. But obviously there are certain specified conditions for that. An abatement of 90% cannot be available in case the invoice is not mentioning accommodation anywhere. Abatement rates other than the above will be rationalized from earlier 75 and 60% to now 70%.
So what was happening in tour operators, that they were only sending bills for service charges, and they were not, including the charges that has been charged from the customer on account of a package tour or a hotel room and a ticket. So just to curb those, they have come out with this idea that unless until there is a service charge and the package tour, only then you will be such tour company will be eligible for a 90% abatement.
Absolutely. Transport of passengers on motor cab. Presently, abatement of 60% is available on renting of motor cab and no SENVAT. Even now, it's the same thing, no SENVAT. But now what they've added is that the cost of fuel to be added in consideration, charge for providing renting of motor cab services for availing abatement. Now this is really, I don't know how it is supposed to be calculated, because in case you want to avail the abatement, then you have to add the fuel cost. Now if I've gone somewhere and 100 rupees is charged as a, as my, motor cab charges, how will I know how much of the fuel I've used? So nobody can really keep a tab on that. So this is, I don't know.
Difficult proposition for a person who's driving, or a company it's very difficult to keep a track of how much fuel has been used in relation to a travel, say from Connaught Place to Noida.
Anywhere.
It's anywhere.
Transport of passengers by rail. Presently, service tax is leviable on 30% of the amount charged for the service of transport of passengers by rail without SENVAT. That means 70% abatement, basically, that is what they're getting. And SENVAT credit of input services for these services now allowed, which was not allowed earlier. Reverse charge mechanism. In case of mutual funds, exemption in relation of services provided by mutual fund agents distributors to an asset management company was withdrawn in Finance Act 2015 and it was put under reverse charge. Now it is put under forward charge. That is what the difference is. So now I think even the small agents will be able to come out of the net. And they can take credit also.
Right.
This is again a good change. Indirect tax dispute resolution scheme 2006. This is going to be effective from 1st of June 2016. This scheme is basically to provide cases pending before Commissioner Appeals to the assessee after paying duty, interest and penalty equivalent to 25% of duty, who can file declaration up to 31st December 2016. And these proceedings against these assessees will be closed and will get immunity from prosecution. And these are not applicable in these three cases where cafe posa, narcotics or prosecution has already been launched. Now, as yet, there is a notification yet to be issued for this scheme, and this case, I think this covers only the appeals which are pending before the Commissioner Appeals. So not to anybody else.
But this kind of a provision was already there in 11 AC and 78 under the Finance Act.
Correct.
So I personally feel this is only in relation to giving a fillip to collection of taxes.
Correct.
And penalty.
Karvivad Samadhan scheme, which was there earlier.
That was already there in 1998. Then they came out with a VCAS scheme.
Correct.
And now they have come out with this kind of a scheme where they want persons to come forward, pay their full duty plus interest, and also pay up the 25% penalty, and the only benefit that a person gets is that there's immunity from prosecution.
No, only thing is what happens to these cases which are remanded from the CESTAT. It goes back to the Commissioner Appeals. They have not given any clarification on that.
So we expect some clarification to come in relation to these kind of matters.
Also, in case they are just talking about this filing of a declaration. So in case I've filed a declaration but not paid that 25% and the duty the way it is supposed to be paid, then what happens in those cases? So I think these kind of clarifications are yet to come. These are basically the annual returns. The service tax assessees have a certain threshold, which is that a certain threshold is not been defined and it is yet to be notified. And they also have to file an annual return. So now annual return form and threshold is yet to be, so now from 2 returns, they have to file 3 returns. This is again a step towards GST.
GST only, right? Yes. But they will also come out with a clarification as to what would be the threshold limit for companies or individuals to file the annual return.
They need to come out with that. There are certain amendments to SENVAT credit rules. Basically, I think in SENVAT credit rules, more of the amendments that they have are they have just changed the language and nothing else. Especially in case of this Rule 6. Now, Rule 6 has always been a litigative rule and the most confusing. One of the I read somewhere in the morning that there's a Supreme Court judge, who was a High Court judge earlier. He stated once in the court after a hearing saying that Rule 6, why do they make such complicated laws that even the lawyers and judges cannot understand? So how do they expect the assessees or even the officers to understand this rule? So probably, now, they have realized, or because of what he said, they have come up with the language to be a little different. But in spite of saying that, I mean, I personally had to read that Rule 6 at least 4 times to understand the language yet.
Yeah.
So, let's go over the first one.
Yeah.
Says all capital goods having value up to 10,000 per piece will be included in the definition of inputs. This is good, because otherwise they would have to wait for 2 years. Under capital goods credit, you can take 50% of the credit earlier, and then the next year you can take the rest of the 50. So now you can take full credit because it's going to be under inputs. Rule 6 has been amended to improve credit flow, reduce compliance burden and associated litigation, particularly those relating to be distributed credit between exempted credit between exempted and non-exempted final products and services. And Rule 6.3b being amended to allow banks and other financial institutions to reverse credit in respect of exempted goods on actual basis in addition to 50% reversal. So earlier it was only 50% reversal. So now what they've done is they can, in case they can show the proof that this is towards exempted, then I don't think that is going to be possible.
Difficult.
You want to say anything on this?